Let's talk about card block fraud. As the name says, this consists of using a generator to generate a block of card numbers, and then the perpetrator can test all of these card numbers in unprotected websites to check which ones are vulnerable, and then they use those card numbers to actually make purchases and commit fraud. Let's take a look. Card block fraud occurs when a perpetrator uses a credit card number generator to generate, as the name says, a block of credit card numbers. Usually, they have something in common, such as, for example, the BIN or bank identification number. This is represented by the first 6 digits of a card number, and you can derive other card numbers from this. So what happens is, the fraudster generates these numbers, and then they test all of the numbers, and they use the valid ones to perform purchases. Usually, they do one purchase per card to make sure that the number works in the first place. And once they identify the successful numbers, they exploit them further. From a programming point of view, it's almost similar to a password cracker. The fraudster has multiple combinations for the credit card number, and they just brute force their way until some of them work. And then they make use of those. This type of fraud usually targets smaller banks that are not up to date on identity verification methods, including address verification or card security schemes such as CVV, the 3 digits on the back. So let's say, for example, that you generate 500 card numbers, and the bank, for some of these cards, doesn't require you to use the CVV number in order to make a purchase, but the bank, for others, does. So how easily can you exploit the cards that don't need a CVV number? Chances are very easily. So fraudsters can test large quantities of card numbers effectively, and they can identify the cards that have the weakest security, and they leverage those. In this type of fraud, you will see a behavior consisting of the same card being used multiple times with different names, phone numbers, and addresses, especially across retailers. This is because the fraudster has the card number, but they never have the actual name or address of the person. So you will see the same card number associated with different account information, different names, different phones, and so on. Additionally, the person will use false shipping addresses, such as a drop-off point, because they're not sending the purchase to the actual cardholder's home, but temporary addresses where they can pick up the goods and possibly fence them later. So protection against this type of fraud usually starts with techniques such as velocity of use and velocity of change. Velocity of use is about detecting how many times something is used within a period of time, such as the card number. If it's used very high, it has high velocity, and it may be this type of attack. And also the velocity of change, or in other words, how frequently a type of information changes within a given time period. So for this attack, you'll see a high velocity of use for the card number, but a high velocity of change for the phone number, or the address, or the name. Possibly address verification is also a powerful measure here, because the address used never matches the card holders. So if you compare the shipping address of that order with the actual address that the card holder has on file on their bank, and they don't match, that's a red flag. What are some examples of card block fraud? The first is generating multiple numbers and brute forcing a small retailer's website with all of them. This is usually the first line of attack in a strategy like this. Then, picking weak banks and retailers is very frequent. If the fraudster knows in advance which retailer doesn't perform verifications, and if they know that the card numbers generated belong to an unprotected bank, they can invest more heavily on the attack because the success chance will be higher. Another example is physically printing the cards. In the past, before chip card technology, fraudsters could find valid credit card numbers and literally print new cards with them, with a magnetic strip replicated, so that they could test the credit cards in the real world and not just digitally. But chip technology has made this approach kind of obsolete. What are our key takeaways here? The first is that card block fraud consists of generating lots of credit card numbers and then testing them en masse to find winners. Both having card numbers belonging to unprotected banks and testing the transactions on unprotected retailers help this process. Then, everything except the card information will be different, because the fraudster only knows the credit card number. So on retailer websites, you'll see the same credit card associated with different names, different phones, and maybe different addresses. Also, velocity techniques work very well here, because valid card numbers are used for several small purchases across retailers. Checking the same number with a varying address, name, or phone number is a good way to detect this type of fraud. So as we see, card block fraud is usually used by generating a block of card numbers, and it's especially effective if the banking institution for those generated card numbers is not protected, and if the retailers that the numbers are tested on are unprotected as well.